Hello and welcome. I'm James Izimoha and you're watching Daybreak. Let's see your headlines. Fresh US and Iranian strikes are raising fears of a wider regional conflict. Ukraine and 9 European countries have launched a joint program to develop new anti-ballistic missile defenses. And oil prices are climbing as Middle East tensions threaten global energy supplies. Now, the third day of fighting over the Strait of Hormuz is underway as tensions between Washington and Tehran continue to escalate. Both sides have exchanged new warnings and military action around the strategic waterway.
Iran has rejected US plans to oversee the Strait of Hormuz, saying Washington has no role in managing the strategic waterway. In a statement on Monday, military spokesperson Ibrahim Zolfikar warned that any attempt by US forces to direct shipping without Tehran's approval would be met with force.
We will under no circumstances allow the United States to interfere in the management of the Strait of Hormuz. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will deal forcefully with any disruption to the passage of commercial vessels and oil tankers outside the route designated by Iran.
Later, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Tehran would remain the guardian of the Strait of Hormuz forever, rejecting President Donald Trump's proposal that the United States should oversee the waterway and charge Gulf countries for its protection. Hours later, Trump said US forces had begun fresh strikes against Iranian capabilities linked to the strait and that Washington was restoring the blockade. He also said a negotiated settlement with Tehran remained possible.
We have numbers that we haven't had in years, and we're hitting them very hard, and it'll continue, and we'll see what happens. But we're knocking out all of their offensive capability, and we're controlling the straits. We're putting the blockade back, and it's a blockade not for anybody but Iran. In other words, anybody doing business with Iran can't go through. Everyone else will be able to go through.
The latest escalation continued with the US military carrying out a third consecutive night of strikes. Iran reported attacks on several locations and said it had targeted US military assets in the region. Tankers also came under attack in the Strait of Hormuz, while Bahrain reported intercepting Iranian aerial attacks.
Now, airstrikes have hit Sana'a International Airport on Monday, with Yemen's Houthi movement accusing Saudi Arabia of carrying out the attack and warning of retaliation. The Iran-aligned group said it launched ballistic missiles and drones at Saudi Arabia's Aba International Airport in response, while warning airlines against using Saudi airspace. The exchange threatens an informal 4-year-long ceasefire between both sides. Saudi officials have not yet commented on the accusation. قام العدو السعودي بالعدوان السافر عبر طيرانه الحربي على مطار. When we return, we'll discuss the rest of the global stories. Stay with us. Welcome back to Way News. Now, Ukraine has ordered 16 new French combat jets as part of new defensive capabilities announced at a meeting of Ukraine's allies in Paris. The Coalition of the Willing said that new radar systems and supplementary missiles would also be sent to Kyiv. It follows discussions over a new package of Russian sanctions. Russ Collin reports from Paris.
Well, the meeting of the Coalition of the Willing that took place here in Paris on Monday focused around 3 key areas. To start with, peace negotiations, trying to increase the pressure on the Russian president to come to the diplomatic table, ensuring there can be no discussions about Ukraine without Ukraine. Anything that impacts European defence interests and security interests must have Europeans present, and that Russian assets will remain immobilised until Moscow agrees to a peace deal. The second part was about ensuring there can be an increase in the pressure on Moscow, but also an increase in the deliveries of air defence systems to Ukraine and other missile capabilities, and not just those deliveries directly, but also developing the possibility for Kiev to have the ability to license the manufacturing of European defence systems inside Ukraine, so to ramp up domestic production. The third part was about security guarantees and ensuring that they are very important for Europe, ensuring that they can be respected and implemented as soon as a peace deal, a ceasefire, is agreed. Now, we do know that Donald Trump at the G7 summit in Evian last month also suggested licensing for the US Patriot air defence system as a way of trying to support internal production inside Ukraine. And there was also another summit that took place on Monday before the Coalition of the Willing gathering. That was a so-called anti-ballistic missile coalition of several key European partners trying to increase the anti-ballistic missile capabilities inside Ukraine, but also in the wider defence community. The European Council President Antonio Costa saying that ballistic missiles represent a new threat to European security. The next meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, of allies of Ukraine, is scheduled to take place at a ministerial level in September. Ross Cullen, A News, Paris.
Now, a suspected right-wing terror threat linked to a Muslim gathering near Ipswich in the UK has led to a major counter-terrorism investigation and 12 arrests. Zainab Farizada has more.
12 people have been arrested over an alleged right-wing terrorist threat targeting a major Islamic gathering in Suffolk. Counter-terrorism police say the UK Ijtima event at Shrubland Hall was ended early on Sunday as a precaution after officers identified what they described as a potential serious threat. The event, attended by thousands of people, was ended early after police declared a major incident. Officers have confirmed the investigation is linked to right-wing terrorism, with searches continuing at addresses across the country. 8 men have been arrested under the Terrorism Act and remain in custody. 3 other men were arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to murder, while a woman was detained on suspicion of assisting an offender. The arrests were carried out across several locations, including Surrey, Greater Manchester, Essex, London and Ipswich. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood said the police response to what she described as a credible threat had undoubtedly saved lives. She said she knew the incident was deeply concerning for British Muslims and called for communities to unite against hatred. Counter-terrorism police said there was no wider threat to the public, but urged people to remain vigilant and report anything suspicious. Suffolk police said around 15,000 people who attended the gathering had safely left the site, while officers would maintain a visible presence around Shrubland Hall in the coming days. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer condemned the alleged threat, saying he would not tolerate attacks on Muslim communities or any form of anti-Muslim hatred. Zainab Farizada, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Now, Pakistan is once again pushing for de-escalation in the US-Iran conflict. Joining us now to discuss this is Tawab Ifiktar, international relations analyst, joining us from Lahore, Pakistan. Good to have you, sir. Now, Pakistan has again called for restraint. Is Islamabad simply urging calm or trying to protect its role as a credible mediator?
Good morning from Pakistan, and thank you for having me on your channel again. Pakistan has been doing its best to bring peace to the Middle East. Yes, Pakistan hopes peace would go forward despite all this heavy amount of escalation between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran. We hope things would cool down soon, and it's not only for Pakistan that these peace talks should succeed, it's for the whole global community that these peace talks must succeed. and inflation is brought down. The loss of life, whether it be in Tehran or Riyadh or any place in the world, is very harmful for humanity. We hope that things get better and no more damage is done. If a person is in pain, he will go for its solution. Iran has said today that it is in contact with Qatar and Pakistan for holding further peace dialogue. Despite all this heavy exchange between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran, there are hopes that mediation will take place.
Now, I want to ask you this. What would change in the strategy adopted by Pakistan in ensuring the de-escalation that would be different from the previous attempt?
Definitely, the government of Pakistan will be looking into things. The government can speak best for itself. The government of Iran would be looking into different things. The government of Pakistan, the government of Qatar, the government of Oman, which has been very active during all these peace talks, they would also be looking at what are the weak points that are creating problems again and again. The ceasefire that was reached after 41 days of war, that was due to Pakistan's mediation. And since then, whenever there has been a major escalation, Pakistan has played its vital role in calming down things, in bringing down the temperature. So the government of Pakistan, I believe, would definitely be looking at the best options available for solving this conflict.
Now, how much of this crisis is now being shaped by events beyond the US and Iran relationship, including developments involving Israel and the wider Gulf region?
In Israel, the elections of Benjamin Netanyahu are coming. Definitely, Benjamin Netanyahu has been prime minister for Israel for a very long time. He has been in Israeli politics for a very long time. Definitely, he would like to show to his audience that he has played tough, he has played smart, and definitely it is a factor that the Palestinian conflicts, once it gets solved, only then a long-term peace can be achieved in Middle East. At this point of time, I hope peace takes place in Middle East, no further aggression takes place on any side, and there is peace and prosperity all across the world. Because even in Pakistan today, when we woke up, everything had its price hike. Prices are getting high because of these oil crisis of Strait of Hormuz. Hopefully, the world community will intervene and tell Israel that the Palestinian conflict now needs to be solved.
Now, in your opinion, is the immediate priority now restoring trust or preventing the conflict from widening further?
Trust building measures are the most necessary thing. Trust building measures are very necessary because definitely the entire conflict is based on misunderstandings. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran must agree on one thing, that they have to let each other exist. They have to go for coexistence. If there is any doubt on any side, it would be a problem. I hope the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States of America go for a peaceful tone. Definitely during war, the one is not going to exchange flowers or chocolates, but definitely one has to go for peace. Trust building measures are the basic thing right now that are necessary for peace in Middle East. This conflict needs to stop. The entire world community needs a rest from this conflict.
Now, Pakistan has consistently argued that diplomacy remains the only solution. Is there still enough political will on both sides to return to meaningful negotiations?
I think President Masood Pezeshkian is acting matured. I believe President Masood Pezeshkian is ready to give peace a chance. And the same goes for sane minds in America. Even President Donald Trump has realized in many ways that Iran is not Venezuela. Iran is not Venezuela. So there are people even in Trump administration who have the desire for peace. And definitely, when both sides come together with full determination for peace, peace can be achieved. At this point of time, we do not want any type of escalation. The escalation in Yemen or any other country in the Middle East would definitely trigger unwanted events. So we hope that the Islamic Republic of Iran, the government in Tehran, the government in Washington, D.C. would act in a very matured way, in a way that is suitable for both of them.
Now, the Strait of Hormuz remains central to this crisis. At what point does a regional dispute become a global economic problem, or even further than it already is?
It has, it has. Your question is very valid. Your question is valid. Your question is relevant to the extent that the entire world community is now looking at alternative sources of energy. The Strait of Hormuz has basically been a way through which oil has been transported very cheaply. The transportation of oil through the Strait of Hormuz has remained very cheap. And yes, this conflict is definitely affecting other factors as well. This is affecting the Ukraine war. Zelensky has openly said that the attention from Ukraine war has shifted to the Strait of Hormuz. It has shifted to Iran. It has shifted to Middle East. So definitely the price hike in Europe, like even the Easter eggs got expensive this year. The Ramadan all across the Muslim world got expensive this year. Definitely, marriage ceremonies had to be shortened due to this war, that people were not able to afford their marriage ceremonies as usual. So definitely, this conflict is affecting the world community and large. And hopefully, once peace is restored, Strait of Hormuz is open, prices will come down. It's very necessary that the leaders, the movers and shakers, the main decision makers in the world realize how challenging it is for ordinary human beings to continue with these wars. These wars have triggering effects, and definitely they have their ethnic effects, they have their effects on history, they have their effects on political mindset. And definitely the upcoming elections in America would be affected by whatever has happened in the Middle East since 28th of February 2026.
Now, all that being said, how much pressure is Pakistan under right now to ensure that they have a concrete agreement or try to bring both sides back to the negotiating table?
At this time, I wouldn't say it's a pressure. I think it's Pakistan's realization that they can do something good. The Iranian government has openly appreciated Pakistan's role in being a peacemaker, in being a mediator. They have never said it's the fault of Pakistani government that peace hasn't been achieved. The same goes for America. JD Vance, President Donald Trump, others in the US government have openly appreciated Pakistan's tremendous role as a peace maker, as a peace builder, as a mediator. So it's not pressure, but it's a desire, because Pakistan has hundreds and thousands of years of old relationship. This subcontinent has a hundreds and thousands of old real relationship with the Persian civilization, with the Iranian civilization. So definitely we hope that peace is in Iran, that nothing is harmful happening in Iran that is harming us as well. We want peace in Iran, we want peace in other Central Asian countries, we want peace over here in Pakistan, we want peace in the Gulf region. And definitely Iran has a very huge supportive population in Pakistan. So it's best for Pakistan that Iran remains prosperous. Iran remains prosperous and friendly with other countries.
Now, to a large extent, Israel is still part of the equation in the U.S.-Iran dynamics. What is the plan to address Israel's involvement in this conflict from Pakistan's side?
Well, that's true. That's true. The Pakistani relationship with Israel is very complicated. Since 1947, since its birth, Pakistan has not recognized Israel. And the reason is that Pakistan believes that until and unless the position of Palestinian is clear, the situation, the position of Palestinian people, the Palestinian land is clear, we are not going to move forward with any formal recognition. So definitely Pakistan cannot definitely pick up a phone and talk to the Prime Minister of Israel that these are the things we want to talk to you about. But definitely Pakistan has said that there are lines. Ceasefire in Lebanon must fully be implemented. No occupation of Lebanese territory must take place. A ceasefire in Gaza must take place. Medical aid, other aid should be allowed in Palestine. Pakistan on its side can only say that don't do any aggression. That would be sufficient enough to bring peace. that would be sufficient enough for Pakistan to make US and America to sit on a table and have a decent dialogue and have their problems solved through a mannerism-based discussion.
Now, what would a realistic path back to sustained dialogue actually look like now?
That's true. That's true. After all the harm that has taken place, the road back home seems very bumpy. The road back home seems very, very bumpy. And yes, it is necessary. We have seen a tremendous amount of damage done to humanity in Africa due to wars and wars that could have been stopped but not stopped. We have seen huge amount of devastation in Europe during this conflict since the 23rd of February 2022 between Russia and Ukraine. Tremendous amount of damage has been done in Ukraine and Russia. So definitely once a war starts, it's very difficult to end it, but the desire, the determination, the firm aim, the resilient aim to have peace can do things better. Since the 23rd of February 2022, both Russia and Ukraine have had heavy losses. But at some point of time, they will also have to realize we have to come on a table and discuss things out. Same goes for the Iranian government and the Islamic Republic of Iran. President Masoud Pezeshkian and President Donald Trump, at some point of time, they will have to agree to basic things that can solve this conflict. Loss of life can be stopped once you have the proper mechanism, the proper ideology, the proper roadmap to bring peace.
That was Tayyab Ifiktar, international relations analyst, join us from Lahore, Pakistan. Thank you for your time.
Welcome, welcome. Always a pleasure to be on your channel.
Now, Europe's late June heatwave has been linked to more than 10,000 excess deaths, most of them among older people. That's according to the latest figures from Euromomo, a European mortality monitoring network. The data highlights how extreme temperatures can raise mortality even when individual deaths are not officially classified as heat-related.
More than 10,000 excess deaths were recorded across Europe during the record-breaking heatwave that peaked in late June. But excess deaths do not mean every case was officially classified as heat-related. The figure measures how many more people died than would normally be expected during the same period. Euromomo data from 27 European countries recorded 10,650 excess deaths between June 22nd and 28th. More than 9,000 were among people aged 65 and above. Older people are particularly vulnerable because extreme heat can cause heat stroke and worsen heart and respiratory conditions. Researchers linked the increase to the heat wave because the mortality spike came as temperatures peaked, while no other major factor, such as a COVID-19 outbreak, was identified. In the previous 8 weeks, deaths across the same countries had averaged around 500 below expected levels each week. France and Belgium recorded very high excess mortality, with Belgium reporting its deadliest heatwave period since records began in 2000. A separate study estimated that 2,700 people died from heat-related causes in England and Wales during heatwaves in May and June. Researchers said 42% of those deaths were linked to the additional heat caused by global warming.
Now, it's large enough that we're seeing that signal not just at the global mean, not just to the continental mean, not just in the regional mean, but at the local mean, at the weather stations where people live. We are seeing the impacts of climate change on extreme heat. We're seeing it on extreme rainfall. We're seeing it on sea level rise and storm surges if you're in a coastal area. We're seeing it in wildfires. And it is now no longer possible to just say, oh, you know, this is just something that the scientists worry about. It doesn't affect normal people. It's affecting normal people, and it's affecting them all over the world.
Scientists said the late June heatwave would have been virtually impossible without human-caused climate change. The extreme temperatures also broke records, disrupted power supplies, and forced schools to close, showing how heatwaves can affect public health and essential services at the same time.
Now, Hungary's parliament has approved a constitutional amendment to remove President Tamás Sólyok on Monday. as Prime Minister Peter Magyar moves to dismantle institutions linked to former leader Viktor Orban. The amendment passed with 139 votes in favor and would end Sulyok's term immediately, citing a serious loss of public confidence. Parliament will then elect a replacement for up to 5 years, while Magyar's government begins drafting a new constitution in the autumn. Magyar said Sulyok must either resign or sign the amendment within 5 days or face impeachment proceedings. The European Union and international partners launched a $1 billion initiative on Monday to support Gaza's recovery, with funding focused on essential services and reconstruction. The agreement was signed in Brussels in the presence of Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa and representatives of donor countries. The Team Gaza initiative will fund projects to restore water and sanitation networks, remove debris, and re-establish health services. More than a dozen countries are taking part, alongside the World Bank, the European Investment Bank, and the European Commission. The United Nations estimates Gaza's reconstruction could cost $70 billion after more than 2 years of war. Now, global oil markets are once again under pressure after rising tensions in the Middle East fuel concerns over energy supplies. Here's more.
Oil prices have climbed to their highest level in a month after the ceasefire between Washington and Tehran collapsed. It follows recent attacks between both Iran and the US in the Strait of Hormuz, heightening uncertainty about energy flows. Brent crude rose by 2% to $84.98 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate gained just over 2% to $79.79. The latest increase follows a 9.6% jump in Brent prices on Monday, the biggest single-day rise since May 2020. Oil prices are now at their highest since the two countries signed a memorandum of understanding to end the war on the 17th of June. The market reacted after the United States reinstated its naval blockade of Iran, while both sides stepped up military activity in and around the narrow waterway, one of the world's most important oil shipping routes. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates says 2 UAE oil tankers were struck by Iranian cruise missiles in Omani waters, killing 1 Indian crew member and injuring 8 others. Analysts say the renewed confrontation has added fresh uncertainty to the oil market. Shipping data also shows that only 14 vessels passed through the strait on Sunday, the lowest daily traffic recorded in a month.
Now, Venezuela says it will revise its economic plans to reflect the impact of last month's earthquakes. The death toll since the 24th of June has risen to nearly 4,500 people and has left nearly 18,000 homeless, according to latest figures. Economic Vice President Calito Ortega said in a televised address on Monday that the government has held talks with partners and international financial institutions, such as the government looks to work on a sovereign debt restructuring.
The third priority is to maintain the objective of debt restructuring. In parallel with the emergency response, we continue to move forward in an orderly manner on the roadmap for the sovereign debt restructuring process. In recent weeks, we have held intensive technical exchanges with our partners and with international financial institutions.
Now over to South Africa, where authorities are stepping up its migration management campaign as anti-migrant protests spread. The government says it's deported more than 53,000 people during the last 5 weeks. The latest figures highlight the scale of the government's campaign and the growing concerns surrounding it.
South Africa says more than 53,000 foreign nationals have been deported or repatriated since launching a nationwide migration enforcement campaign 5 weeks ago. Most are from Malawi, followed by Zimbabwe and Mozambique. The campaign is one of South Africa's largest crackdowns in recent years. However, the move has been marked by violence, intimidation, and looting during anti-immigration protests. Demonstrators have called for tighter border controls and mass deportations, accusing undocumented migrants of contributing to unemployment, crime, and pressure on public services. The United Nations has urged caution, warning against using migrants as scapegoats for South Africa's economic and social problems. Anti-migrant groups have threatened weekly protests until their demands are met. An unofficial deadline of the 30th of June prompted many foreigners to flee over fears of violence. Minister Mamamaloko Kubayi says immigration laws will continue to be enforced, but warned protesters not to search homes or businesses, saying only law enforcement has that authority.
All right, after the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Now, Azerbaijan is welcoming another European leader for high-level talks aimed at strengthening ties between the two countries. A News correspondent Ayten Shukurova reports from Shusha.
Preparations are now underway here at the press center in Shusha ahead of talks between President Ilham Aliyev and his Slovak counterpart Peter Pellegrini. According to the program, the two leaders will first hold a one-on-one meeting, followed by expanded format talks with members of both delegations. Once those discussions conclude, the presidents are expected to come to this press area and deliver statements to the media. The talks are expected to focus on strengthening bilateral relations, particularly in trade, investment and energy cooperation. The two leaders are also expected to exchange views on regional and international developments and explore new areas of cooperation between Azerbaijan and Slovakia.
All right, now the fourth Shusha Global Media Forum is bringing journalists, policymakers and media leaders from around the world to discuss trust, technology and the future of global journalism. Join us now is Akbar Novruz, geopolitical analyst. Join us from Baku. Good to have you, Akbar.
James, pleasure to join.
All right, this year's forum focuses on restoring truth and rebuilding trust. Why has that become such a central challenge for media worldwide?
Well, James, perhaps the Shusha Media Global Forum has undoubtedly made its return in a consequential form, perhaps in regards to the current dynamics surrounding the region as well, and the participation around 160 individuals and 54 representatives from different countries, from 54 different countries, including the journalists, analysts, and top executives as well. And I personally consider this gathering as more of an annual report on the yearly stance of Azerbaijan's current and upcoming stance on certain diplomatic and economic issues. And ever since 2023, I would say that President Ilham Aliyev has been dedicating hours to answering questions from participants, articulating his stance on Azerbaijan, and this doesn't merely happen on on a yearly occasion for many countries, but it has turned into a tradition for our country. In regards to your question as well, how is this happening? Because today in the world, we currently, I think the people have become more sensitive in terms of having lots of wars and conflicts in a day where misinformation has been more of a, I would say, something related with the current exposition, because it has turned into some more of a parasite thing, because disinformation is indeed a big problem. And articulating and conducting this kind of questionnaires and this kind of conferences puts a perspective on certain countries' stance on certain period. And in regards to Azerbaijan's position, Azerbaijan is a unique country which is trying to establish a friendly relationship and a pragmatic relationship with every country as much as it can, to a certain extent, of course. It is much more difficult to put your stance and show your stance to a certain period, because it gets more difficult for analysts and representatives to ensure how Azerbaijan is actually conducting its diplomacy. So this kind of events actually puts a great perspective on Azerbaijan in terms of conducting its policy in geopolitical perspective, I would say.
All right. Now, artificial intelligence and disinformation feature prominently on the agenda. Are governments and media organizations keeping pace with the speed of technological change?
I would say yes, but it depends on the country's whole perspective, I would say, because certain countries are not accepting this kind of usage of AI in governmental authorities. For example, Albania, I would say, came out surprisingly as one of the first countries to conduct, integrate artificial intelligence to its government, and putting one of the, I think, parliamentary speakers or the one of the leaders of parliament as an artificial intelligence. But this is more of a, I would say, a problem in terms of regulating and putting decisions makes certain things problematic for countries, because artificial intelligence at the end of the day is not a human. So this is not a thing that you can actually sue or put a responsibility on. So in terms of integrating this kind of issues is more of a big problem in my opinion, but it needs to be adapted. The countries, the governments, needs to be adapted, and probably there could be some sort of regulation in terms of usage artificial intelligence amongst the people, because this kind of tool is not more of a, how do you say, it's not a great tool in terms of putting objective idea, because it actually puts its answers customized for the user itself. So this is more of a problem. At the end of the day, this is a tool, this is a robot. As long as it gets used, it gets more of a problematic thing. And AI has this kind of thing when it becomes to eats itself, so it gets into a problem. But of course, the governments will probably adapt itself to artificial intelligence and find some ways in terms of putting some regulations towards it.
Now, the forum also highlights media, diplomacy, and cross-border dialogue. Can journalism still serve as a bridge between countries at a time of growing geopolitical tensions?
Yes, indeed. In my opinion, journalism, as long as it actually gets, I would say, prospered, and it is allowed and is permitted to a certain extent, it is a great tool in terms of being a bridge between the people, between the citizens and the government itself. Uh, as long as the information, not in terms of putting the information as fast as possible. I think the journalists and the whole media representatives, all media should be able to put the information as objective as possible to make a bridge between the government and the citizens itself. Because whenever the information gets diluted, or let's say biased, I think the relationship between the government and the journalists gets deteriorated, and the citizens stop promising that in that regard. And in terms of putting a diplomacy between one another, in nowadays, unfortunately, we see journalists being in some sort of a information war with one another, not in terms of having a sort of collaboration. But if they can actually ensure and encourage any sort of collaboration between the countries of certain journalists, it can surely be adapted into some sort of a diplomacy, I would say.
Now, beyond the discussions, what practical outcomes would define success for this year's forum? Are we likely to see new partnerships or joint initiatives emerge?
Of course, this is more of a inside thing. Currently, the representatives are looking forward to having any sort of relationship or any sort of collaboration between one another. In terms of high executive collaborations, I think President Aliyev will be meeting with Slovakian president, and certain top executives are looking forward to having any sort of collaboration with the Azerbaijani government in terms of fostering the relationship and having any sort of bilateral economic benefits, let's say. So in terms of implementing any sort of collaboration between one another, it is possible to a certain extent, but I think it gives more of a blueprint for the companies or top executives about Azerbaijan to see its stance and to see its perspectives on the upcoming issues, not only diplomatically but economically as well. So this is more of a blueprint and a blueprint for the relationship in the future, in my opinion.
Now, speaking about Azerbaijan, Shusha has become the permanent home of this forum. What does that say about Azerbaijan's ambition to position itself as a platform for international dialogue?
Well, Shusha, of course, acts as a very sensitive city, in my opinion, because unfortunately it has been under occupation for over 3 decades. And hosting this for the fourth consecutive time adds a great importance to the city, that Azerbaijan uses the city in a way in terms of putting all those connectivity between one another and addressing Azerbaijan's foreign policy and various geopolitical concerns as well. And the government of Azerbaijan is increasingly presenting these issues as part of a coherent strategic narrative rather than more of a separate foreign policy matters. And this more of a acts like a foreign policy matter. And to understand this importance, I would like to quote one of the things that President Ilham Aliyev has actually made a clear statement regarding that. When Azerbaijan is actually began constructing this kind of connectivity between one another, there was almost no little framework existed in the first place. And this fact is both more of a description of historical conditions and the creation of that subsequently achieved through dedication and collaboration between the nations and etc. And I think the way that the comments have been delivered yesterday were distinctive from the other statements that the Azerbaijan authorities have made in regard to this issue. It is more important to develop relationship with neighboring countries because it is impossible to become a country that is trying to be friendly within one another. So this city, as I said, for the fourth year in a row, acts as a great way of representing Azerbaijan's foreign policy in that matter.
Now, looking ahead, what role could forums like this play in shaping global standards on AI, media ethics, and information security over the coming years?
Well, it actually acts as I would say, a great blueprint, as a more of a great representing Azerbaijan's position in terms of putting objective issues. For example, during the event, President Ahmadiev actually talked about one of the issues when one of the representatives, I think the Ukrainian representative, put a question about Ukraine's sovereignty. And in regards to the relationship between the Russia, Ukraine, and Azerbaijan, this kind of triangle, there was a question posed by the Deputy Minister of TASS agency. President Hamaliyev reminded the audience that this very person, Mikhail Guzman, after putting a question to President Hamaliyev last year. And this kind of issue actually shows that the relationship between one another, the countries, the media representatives, should be more about the forum. Everyone should understand these things, that this is more of a act of asking questions. So in terms of putting a relationship between one another, the media representatives should be aware about the situation more honestly, and aware that should be aware that asking so those kind of questions can actually end up resulting with some sort of a job loss, unfortunately. But Azerbaijan's objective manner puts a great, I would say, distinct blueprint for other countries, for media representatives, to be more exact and to be more objective in regards to certain policies, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Akbar Novruz, geopolitical analyst, joining us from Baku, Azerbaijan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you as well for the invitation.
Now, the 4th Shusha Global Media Forum is up and running, bringing together journalists, policymakers, and media leaders from around the world.
President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev attended the opening ceremony of the 4th Shusha Global Media Forum, where he addressed participants and answered questions from journalists and media representatives. He was first asked how growing geopolitical tensions are affecting the strategic importance of overland transport corridors and Azerbaijan's role in regional connectivity.
Yes, situation in the Middle East now makes this corridor more attractive. And if only you looked at the flight radar map, during the hot period of standoff, you would see that a very narrow corridor was going through Azerbaijan. And the same can be applied to the maritime transportation across the Caspian and land transportation. So all these factors definitely increase the importance of Azerbaijan. And fortunately, we've been ready to handle a growing number of cargo. Now we are expanding our facilities. Our trade seaport, though it is now the biggest in the Caspian with 15 million tons, will be upgraded up to 25 million tons. We are now building 10 vessels at our shipyard in order to be able to evacuate cargoes from Europe and to Europe. Our close relations with countries of Central Asia and the European Commission, and situated just in the center, in the middle of these two destinations, really creates a big advantage.
The discussion then turned to the war in Ukraine, with the Azerbaijani president asked what advice he would give to the Ukrainian people and leadership.
I think neither Ukrainian people nor Ukrainian authorities, they didn't need any advices, but I would reiterate, never reconcile with occupation. And this is what Ukraine is doing. They don't do it. Although there were some difficult situations throughout this year, and we have seen and we know and heard about pressure on the part of some circles upon the ceasefire option, in fact, fixing the occupation regime, but neither Ukrainian people nor leadership, they didn't agree to that.
Participants also raised questions about Azerbaijan's ties with the United States and the future of bilateral cooperation.
And many other factors demonstrate that relations now at the peak level, unprecedented level, which we never had before. And today we are working actively to implement all the provisions of the Strategic Partnership Declaration, particularly those working groups which have been established are working very actively on trade and investments, on digital transformation and AI, on energy security and connectivity, on defense and defense sales. And the United States lifted all the embargoes on supply of weapons to Azerbaijan. And right after that, the same was done by United Kingdom and by members of the European Union.
The 4th Shusha Global Media Forum continues with panel discussions on the future of journalism, artificial intelligence and the fight against disinformation. The event has brought together nearly 160 media leaders, journalists and policymakers from more than 50 countries.
Now, residents in remote villages in Afghanistan are calling for proper bridges A lack of safe roads forces hundreds of people to use a makeshift cable car over a fast-flowing river each day.
In Afghanistan's mountainous Nuristan province, residents are risking their lives to cross a fast-flowing river using a makeshift cable car. Children, women and elderly people in Perun district rely on the hand-pulled cart to reach schools, clinics and nearby villages. Men and youths pull the cable car across the river, with the crossing becoming more dangerous when water levels rise.
When the water rises, the risk percentage increases even more. You can see that even now, children are struggling to cross.
Residents say hundreds of people use the crossing every day because there are few bridges or safe roads in the area.
Every day, our children, women, and elderly people take risks every day by crossing this cable bridge.
Locals are urging the authorities to build a proper bridge, saying people carrying heavy loads face particular difficulty. Nuristan's steep terrain and limited infrastructure have left many remote communities dependent on hazardous routes to access basic services.
Now to some sport news. Spain and France will face each other on Tuesday for a place in the 2026 FIFA World Cup final in what many see as the tournament's biggest match so far. Spain arrive on a 36-match unbeaten run, while France are chasing a third consecutive World Cup final after winning the title in 2018 and finishing runners-up in 2022. Argentina and England will meet in the other semi-final on Wednesday, marking the first time the World Cup's 4 ranked teams have all reached the last 4 of a World Cup. All right, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.